They told us that our lives were going to get radically easier and radically less stress because the advent of technology, which was going to turn us into kind of this Jetson-like future where we'd be flying around in space cars, living to 200 years old, and everybody would be wealthy and happy.
It's because, when you create space, you just fill it up, don't you? And this is the problem, that the technology created space and we filled that up, and we filled that up with more.
So we'll switch gears a little bit, and we'll dive a little bit into your expertise in around heart health and maybe health span. And, there's health span and longevity. And I think to curate what that means for people is, I read a paper, it was about 10 or 15 years ago. It was written by a Professor Oshansky, who did a really interesting research paper for the New England Journal of Medicine, and demonstrated that not only was the lifespan of the generations to come he expected to go down, but he said the disability adjusted lifespan was going way up. And that means the average person in the United States at 60 years old was on had some sort of debilitating condition or reliant on some sort of life compromising medicine, even though they might be living to be 80 years old or 85 years old. The quality of life wasn't that good. And the information provided through a lot of our medical institutions is really, treating the symptoms of disease as opposed to what are the lifestyle causes. So where I want to go with this is, what are some of the things that you've discovered in your experience around heart health and maintaining your heart? Because heart disease is still the #1 killer in the world. What are some things that people need to incorporate in their lives, period, that you think that you found, and maybe some nuanced ones that might be right for some people?
I mean, I think the first and foremost thing is, I think the #1 killer is stress. And I think it's amazing what we put our bodies through. There was a time 20 years ago, 20 or 30 years ago, when I was a medical student, and there was nothing like the internet. We had no internet. We had no mobile phones. To do a small bit of work, something which would take a minute today, would take me the whole day. I would have to go to the library. I would have to look into Index Medicus. I'd have to find the references, etc., etc. Today, we can do that within a minute, yet we have less time now than we had then.
Why is that? This is the curious thing. I remember I went through that whole process too. At university, you had to go through looking for everything. And I remember we were starting with MS-DOS on the computer way back in the day with these little, inefficient computers. And they told us that our lives were going to get radically easier and radically less stress because the advent of technology, which was going to turn us into kind of this Jetson-like future where we'd be flying around in space cars, living to 200 years old, and everybody would be wealthy and happy.
It's because when you create space, you just fill it up, don't you? And this is the problem, that the technology created space and we filled that up, and we filled that up with more. And there is this very constant message that goes out there, which is work hard, play hard, work harder, play harder. Happiness is just around the corner. Everything about the way governments work is to try and get people to work as hard as possible. And that comes at great personal sacrifice. It comes at the cost of mental health. Stress, there is so much trauma that goes on. There is so much breakup in families, marital breakup, bereavement, yet no one has the time. People don't have the time to grieve. People don't have the time to recalibrate. People don't have the time to do anything. It is seen as a sign of weakness. This message that, oh my God, you need to get on with it. You need to, otherwise you're going to be letting the side down. This is a wrong message to my mind. if you look at the societies where people are a lot more relaxed, the pace of life is a bit quieter, in general, you will see less disease there. Those people tend to be healthier, both mentally and physically. Mental health, you cannot be physically healthy if you're mentally unhealthy. And
It's funny you should say that, because I've looked at a lot of the research around the blue zones, and I had another doctor who is an expert in brain health recently, Dr. Sarah Mackay. And one of the common elements from childhood to midlife to old age was social connections. And if you look at these blue zone areas, and I've been to Okinawa and Costa Rica and stuff, and you have these tight group communities. Age is valued. There's a certain respect in there. There's a natural fun. There's a lot of space, a lot of quietness, a lot of friendliness, and a lot of social connections. And, these people have been able to not only have long lives, but very productive and integrated lives that are fulfilling. They're not out, building $1 billion brands, or they're not out there, checking their blood work every 30 minutes to see if their ketone levels are on par with the latest, supplement or drug that they took, or if their cognitive capacity is firing at 0.78 more, speed. It's a very interesting world, and you bring this topic up. So how does someone reduce stress in their life? How does someone in today's fast-paced world incorporate that spaciousness that allows you to kind of take on that mental health piece?
I mean, I think it is that, you have to have time for self-reflection. You have to have that time. You have to be able to think beyond the messages that you read everywhere. You have to be able to make a conscious decision not to join the rat race and spend your whole life. I'm fortunate because I'm in a profession where I see death on a daily basis. So, and even then, I don't necessarily do everything I preach. I just think that I know I can see exactly where the pressures lie, etc. But thinking about it is a good step forward in the right direction. I think it is important always to bear in mind that a bad thing can happen to anyone at any time. No one is immune. What we have control over is our quality of life. What we have control over is personal investment, personal growth. That is important, not to stagnate. I think it is important to focus on your health wherever possible and put that first. So if you're working, 20 hours a day, then I would say, actually, no, at some point, there are things about me that are important. I want to look after myself first. And then if I can squeeze it in, great. I know it's very hard for some people. Some people aren't in a position where they can think like that. But there are lots of people who are in a position that can think like that, but choose not to. Because in some way, again, it is this very competitive world. It is this, dog eats dog world. I think you can achieve a happier balance. I think you can sit back and say, okay, well, I do enough, and that's okay. And that's all that matters. I get a ton of people come to me and say, look, I'm really worried, doctor. I've got 2 6-year-olds, and I want to be there for them when they get to 21. And I say, are you there for them now? Because if you're not there for them now, you're not going to be there for them when they're 21. If you suddenly think that your whole ethos will change when they get to 21, the answer is no. They'll hate you by the time they get to 21 because you're not there for them now. Second thing that can happen is they could die, you could die. Be there for them now. And that, to my mind, is the most important thing. So understanding that is really important. Living each day as it comes along, living each day and trying to live a wholehearted life. And this pursuit of materialistic things perhaps is more harmful to us than does us good, so the more you it does require a lot of kind of thought and reflection, etc. But I think somewhere I feel that I'm in the right kind of space. I'm heading it towards the right space.
Now, do you believe in this spaciousness, or in the kind of fast-paced world? Like, do you use any methodologies of contemplation, meditation, mindfulness, any of these things, or because obviously the demands of your job are pretty mentally rigorous,
Yeah.
compared to, say, an average person. What would you? How do you do that in your world, which is super demanding? Like I said, you're dealing with death. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't get any more stressful than that.
I mean, this is something I've only started incorporating in the last couple of years, and that is gratitude. My father was very unwell 2 years ago. I thought we were going to lose him. I remember there was a make or break night, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember lying there in my bed, and I didn't know. I was so scared, so scared. And I prayed. And ever since then, I've prayed every night. And it is not to ask for something, it is to say thank you. Thank you for that night. And I think that is what people mean by gratitude, being grateful for what you have. And as long as I do that, life seems to go okay. I think I can cope. I don't know, but it keeps me, it's something that's nice that I've brought into my life. So I'm grateful for that. So I do think, when you think about it, there are two things I think that you want to get to as a human being. You want to become more human, humanity and gratitude. If you have both, I think you've lived a good life. I think that's where fulfillment lies, humanity and gratitude.